Hello, friends. Welcome to episode number 3 of the Learning to Cope podcast. I am your co-host, Warren Levi Haney.
And I am your co-host, Nick Vogel. Each show, we'll be talking to artists and asking them what being a creative is like in a world without personal interaction.
Our guest today is honestly one of the coolest people that I've ever met in my life, and Nick now has the experience of talking with her too.
Also now one of the coolest people I have ever met.
Exactly. Her name is Derieux, and she is a dancer, arts administrator, business runner. She is ice skated in Africa from 7 to 10.
Yeah.
She is just one of the coolest people that I feel like I've ever come in contact with.
Yeah, just an amazing story and an amazing woman to go along with it. I'm so happy to present this podcast. I think if you're a creative at all, this has something in here for you. We talk about arts administration, just being an artist when it comes to being a performer. We talk about what it's like to do all that during the pandemic. And we get to hear this just an incredible story of someone who is able to transfer their skills and use their skills as an artist successfully throughout their entire life.
Totally. And I think for artists, creatives, people that like to innovate, this pandemic has really been so hard for a lot of people. And with projects being cut short or plans being changed, and it could be really depressing for a lot of people. But I think that Anne and this conversation that she's providing for us and her insight is exactly what artists need to be hearing. So our listeners, I'm so excited for us to join this journey together.
I definitely feel like, the light at the end of the tunnel is illuminated.
Seriously. So without further ado, let's lead the way. Let's leave it out. Let's get out of this so that we can just give it over to her. Everybody, welcome on and Derieux. Well, fantastic. And thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. You're welcome. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, first off, it's just really cool to have you on, and I really am excited for our listeners to get to know you and really what you're about. So before we kind of go into everything, would you be able to give a little bit of a background about who you are and you're kind of starting to doing what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Anne Derieux. It's a French name. I was born in Versailles in France, and basically started doing ballet when I was very young, around 5, 6, and then moved to Africa. My family moved to Africa for 3 years, and I started ice skating there. And when I came back to France, I was 10 years old. The ice skating range was too far from my parents, so they said, well, you're going to go back to ballet. I was not happy about it, but my parents were, when you start something, you continue. So I was back in the ballet studio at Versailles, and I got completely hooked. A teacher really made me want to do more and thought I had a little bit of talent. So he told my parents at 13, I auditioned for the Conservatoire National Supérieur de Paris, which is a state school. It's all funded by the government, so it costs nothing to students. And I was accepted among about a couple hundred students. 10 of us were accepted. So it was very selective. And so my parents thought, okay, well, if you got in, it means you have a little bit of talent, so we'll trust that. So for 5 years, I basically studied ballet from 13 to 18. And then I was accepted to Monte Carlo Ballet, which was a new company started by the Princess Caroline of Monte Carlo in memory of her mother, Grace, who died a couple of years earlier. So she died in 1981, and the Monte Carlo Ballet were started in 1985, and I was the first dancer hired for that new company. So it was 1985. I was 18. I was in a company that had no budget issues. Monte Carlo is fully financed by the casinos, and they make a lot of money. So it was a fun time at 18 to make a nice salary. And basically we toured about 8 months out of the year because Monte Carlo is the equivalent of, I don't know, a little state. Comparing to Seattle, it's probably like Queen Anne size. Anyway, so we toured all over the world, and I did that for 8 years, and I got tired of it because, living off your suitcase is fun for a while. But at 25, I decided I wanted to experience America. So I auditioned. I left France by myself, auditioned for 2 months in various cities in North America, Canada included. And long story short, Pacific Northwest Ballet offered me the contract in 1992 here. So I came to Seattle by myself, didn't know anyone, and arrived in August 92 to dance with PNB. I was a principal dancer there, so the top of the rank, which is, you have to, because otherwise you cannot really get a visa, a working visa. It's at this time it was called a O1 visa. It's a visa for artists of extraordinary abilities. It's a little bit of a joke,
okay.
But basically it's a visa ensuring that you're not taking the job of an American citizen. So you have to prove you're bringing something else to the country that no American can bring. Yes, that's why I'm saying it's a little bit of a joke. But so that means you have to have some kind of career with some press clips about you, making you unique, kind of. And I got that because I danced quite a lot in Monte Carlo and on tour, so I had reviews from all over the world. And so I got my visa, PNB gave me a contract, and here I was at 26 years old, about 26, in Seattle, and danced a lot with PNB. All the ballets I wanted to do, I did them, most of them. And in 2000, actually, it's going to be 20 years, I stopped dancing this June. And I decided, I was 33, and I decided I wanted to do something else. So a trustee at the ballet asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, I have no idea. Where's the money coming from here to pay my salary as a dancer? And that's the first time I heard fundraising, because it's a word that doesn't translate actually in French. There's not such a thing that fundraising in Europe, because all the country, we are heavily subsidized by the government, by taxpayers' money. So so fundraising doesn't really exist. It starts to exist actually now in Europe because they have to do it. But anyway, at that time, it was unknown to me. And I was fascinated by that culture of philanthropy that is very unique to the US, actually. So I went back to school. So I was 33. I was pregnant. And I went back to school to study fundraising management for nonprofit at UW. It's a certificate program. 9 months later, I had a baby and I had a little certificate. And I got a job right away. And it was basically a small nonprofit in Auburn at that time. That was a dance school / company. And that's how I started. And I learned everything by doing it. I went to school, but basically I applied everything I learned in school the day after at work. That's the best school in many ways. I learned on the job. And so I kept doing this, and this is what I've been doing for 20 years now. It's my second career. I completely stopped dancing. Again, my last show was June 2nd, 2000. And I never taught, never choreographed, never coached anybody. I really turned the page, decided I wanted to do something else. So that's what I've been doing, is basically management for nonprofit. I did a few jobs as executive director, so not just doing fundraising, but really managing a small nonprofit, mostly the arts and most recently education. But mostly I managed small artistic nonprofit organizations, which gave me a certain edge because as a former dancer, former artist, I could really speak the language of the artist, but also I've always been interested in the business aspect of a nonprofit. So that's really what I really enjoyed in my new path. It was really managing a small business looking at finance, building budgets. For some reason, I love it. Never really went to school for that, but really enjoyed it. And yeah, that's what I've been doing for 20 years now. And I ended up
That
at
is amazing.
Cornish. Yeah, so
Yeah. Wow.
I hope it was not too long.
Right. It's funny. I was, talking to Nick and saying I was really excited to get you on, and I've known you for a couple years or so now, and I was just kind of like, this person's amazing. I can't wait to have her on. And then like, there's so many things that I didn't even know just from you telling me about that with ice skating in Africa and your like business management and everything like that too. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, did I mention that she's a superhuman that we're getting on this podcast right now? Like, that is exactly what's going on. That's fantastic.
It's in the DNA of artists to learn new things, to problem solve, to just, move forward, keep moving forward and learning as you go and solving problems. We're creative and we're actually like challenges in many ways because we're used to it. And so we always keep going, whatever it takes. You learn on the spot, you go back to school, you learn from others, but you just keep going. That's kind of this resilience. Yeah.
Going along with that, actually, I am interested because you were saying earlier that you were like saying like former artists, right? But I'm interested to hear like what your opinion is as far as putting your creative tendencies, just like how you're saying, toward like the business world and arts management world, things like that. Like, what are those creative things, creative properties that you learned from the arts that you have put into business or put into the administrative side?
Yeah. I think what differentiates me from a lot of other nonprofit manager is again what I said earlier. It's that resilient feeling like nothing is impossible. You're just gonna keep trying. You fail, you keep trying. That's something that we learn as artists very early on. Failure is okay. It's not the end of the world, and you go back up and you continue and you find new ways to do something that didn't work before. So I think, we don't, that's what people have told me at least, is, I don't give up. I just keep at it until I find a solution, until I'm good at it. And that's really, I think, our creativity and problem solving approach is really working well for managing small nonprofit, because this is what you're going to face managing those small nonprofits. There is no budget, there is no cash reserve. You have to find ways to make money. You have to find ways. You have to find a case to get money from people. It's this constant, just reinventing yourself and finding the angle and getting back up on your feet and continuing what you want to do. You have the drive. You know what you want, and you're going to get it no matter what, even if you were not taught in school how to do it.
I love that.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah. Seriously. Well, and I totally understand where you're going with, like, always improvising new things. What is a new thing to be done? What is a different direction that we can take if this other direction is falling short, right?
I think even in marketing, I think, as artists, we have to at some point learn what makes us unique. Who are we really? And we know how to, I don't want to talk, brand is too corporate, but, we know how unique we are. We all have our own personality, and I think when you manage nonprofit, you see your nonprofit a little bit like this. It's your cause, and you're really trying to present it to people in a way that is unique, and that helps with fundraising, obviously, because if you're really telling your story, either your story, my story, your story, or the story of your cause or of your mission of your organization, it's the same thing. You're basically sharing the experience, your experience, with the other person, and from that comes people who are interested in you know, going with you on that journey or giving you money to support you or helping you. So I think my artist background has taught me that too, that you have to tell a story. We're storytellers, and that's what people need to hear all the time. Storytelling, and I think a lot of theater people say the same thing. They are storytellers. That's their talent. They know how to tell a story, whatever story it is.
Yeah. It's crazy, like, during this time, and I think that is really important to hear, because this time is really scary for a lot of artists, because so many different projects are cut short, or they have all these plans that they had in the future that also are now being disrupted because this threw a wrench into everything, into whoever which way. But it's great to hear what you're saying there, because we are always forced to adapt. We are always forced to go with the flow of our lives as humans, and rolling with the punches of the environment, even, or political stuff that's going on, or war, or whatever. We always find ways to create and to find community and connectivity, right?
Absolutely.
It's great to see that. And so I'm excited to see what happens in this, in presently, the near future, and also the grand scheme of things. Yeah. It's just interesting.
I mean, when you think of Renaissance and all the big artistic movements, a lot of them have started after a major crisis, a shift, something major in the world or in your country or in a group of people, etc. So I think, and I'm amazed, what you see most right now, what really people like to see on social media is artistic experience. No matter what you hear, you get quotes that are inspiring you, you get people to sing, you get people to play, you see those messages, storytelling. That's what people right now, especially when everybody is struggling and, having a hard time finding answers, what's really soothes all of us is those stories, those messages, those experiences that we're still able to share, even if it's only through a screen. It already, even right now, where we cannot even perform live, we are stuck at home. No artist can really perform or show his or her work. There is still a lot on social media, through screens, artistic, cultural experiences that people really are dying for. That's what people, you see someone singing, in the streets of Italy, or dancers dancing in an apartment, or theater people putting, pieces together online, and that's really uplifting right now. Just that, it's very, very uplifting. It's really helping us go through the day. So I'm not going to say I'm not worried for artists right now, because I know a lot of them are struggling, but we are a bunch of resilient, crazy people who always find ways to reinvent ourselves, and and completely. We will be part of the solution for sure. We will be part of this new world that is gonna develop in front of us. Whatever it is, we don't know yet, but a lot of things are going to change, and artists will be the glue that will seal everything together and will help us make sense of this new world. So again, you'll see when there is even a natural disaster. What brings people together again, what saves them in many ways, it's that connection between people through storytelling, through emotions, sharing similar emotions, all of this. That's really what is the best of humankind. And artists are really the ones that understand that help put the dots together. So I really, more than ever, will need artists. I know artists right now feel very lonely and lost, but I think at some point they will all find a way to be essential.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And I think what is also helping is artists are, like you said earlier, artists are used to the struggle, to the challenge, to the no, to the rejection, to the failure. We're all so, it's just, we don't even notice anymore. It's part of who we are because that's how we've built, and those times, call for this. Our resilience is really helpful right now. So I think we will survive this for sure. And not only that, but I think it's going to create new things. Artists are going to create things that just, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be the next thing.
Yeah, totally. I think that's great. I think we have a lot of I think we have new mediums kind of emerging because of this shift, because everyone is needing to go online to share and needing to go online to consume the art content. One of the benefits I think from one of those things, every time that I get on social media, there's always someone who is live and playing guitar and singing or live and dancing or live and, just sharing their thoughts or expressing themselves in a way that, and people that I'd never seen do that before, probably because, they'd been performing with some troupe or, in a different format. But now because they're forced to, just like everyone, kind of stay at home, everyone is transferring their skills to the digital format.
To the web, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually so funny. There's a Facebook group, my Duolingo French Facebook group that I am in. Someone is posting, they're doing live rave music and live dubstep kind of rave music. He goes for hours, in his little apartment, and it's just him, and he has cool lights, and he's just playing, and he's I'm just playing it for you guys, and that's so cool to have. It's someone to just offer, he's just going forever with all these different beats. Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, it makes actually some of the arts experience more accessible because, again, it's just a click sometimes where going to a live event is not accessible to everybody. So in some ways, it could help reach out to a community of people who don't come to live event.
Right.
So that's also an interesting thing too. Also, something that I'm very curious about is, how technology and the arts are going to have to work together. And what's gonna come out of this? I think more than ever, this is going to be a very interesting partnership because technology is going to need the arts and artists to stay relevant, and artists are going to need technology. If we continue, whatever the future, the near future or long-term future is going to be, I think that there will be more web-based kind of experience for the arts, because I think, even if we would go back to normal, which I don't think we will ever go back to completely normal before March, the technologies has already entered, the artist environment, just because right now they have to. It's a forced dating. So I think out of that, some interesting things could come out, and especially in the performing arts, because everybody right now is saying, well, poor dancer, musician, theater, our actors, what are they going to do? But on the other end, again, there could be some interesting a mix of live and digital experiences. So what is going to become a live performance and a digital one, and how are they going to mix together?
Right.
There are a lot of things that could be possible. I mean, people are, I've read some blogs even saying, oh my God, people are getting used to the free digital experience, of a dance performance or a play, because everybody's streaming, to continue something, some kind of normalcy. So what do they mean? Are they going to never go back to the theater and pay a ticket to go see a theater performance? Since now we've shown them that they can see it from anywhere from their, couch. But I think it's another challenge. So if we go back to live, if we are able at some point to go back to live, how are we going to sell that live experience now that they've experienced the digital experience? I don't know.
Right.
I think that, there are a lot of questions. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I could see some artist technology speed dating going on,
yeah,
like
yeah,
people of different backgrounds of different worlds, right? Being able to
yeah,
come together
yeah,
and create different things. I can definitely see a world where theaters can have your ticket for your live show,
yeah.
and then you also have a discount ticket to see the live production via this
This
camera, right? Like via the video on
exactly,
your,
exactly. Or
couch.
could you have if you pay the extra price, you go see the live show, but then after that, you have a digital experience backstage with exclusive interview with the artist, etc. Peek in their life,
Right.
da 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 da. So you pay $25 for just a ticket live, and then $45, and you get the digital experience after the show or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
But
like
I
a
think
kind of
there
like
are
a
new.
VIP digital experience where,
Exactly,
you
exactly,
have,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
fantastic
Yeah.
idea.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know I'm writing all these down right now.
Yeah.
Creating my was okay. So got the tickets to sell afterwards and things. One of the questions too, and because now that we're talking about future steps, we're just kind of going right into like what artists can be doing, what artists will be doing in the future, and you work in an administration that fosters artists
Mm,
on a collegiate level. That our
mm,
alma mater, Cornish College
mm,
of the Arts, right? So,
mm-hmm.
what is Cornish doing? What is their kind of next steps for fostering those artists during this time of a
Yeah.
pandemic? Like what's their next
Well,
plan going forward?
it's the same as what we just talked about. Everybody has to reinvent themselves, and Cornish included. And I will say, so I'm a product of a non-degree path, because I got a little certificate, 9-month certificate from UW, but I don't have an undergrad degree or anything.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a fancy title of Vice President of Advancement. What's the value of a degree? I think that's the first question that
Right.
we could ask nowadays, and the next generation of students will certainly ask, why bother going on campus for a degree that costs me a lot of money if I
Yeah.
can do the same online for much cheaper? That's one thing. Really,
Mm.
do I really need that BFA or BA or whatever else? And at what price? I think higher ed is going to experience a little revolution. I think it's a little bit of a turning point. And I don't know exactly what's going to be the end, or I don't want to say the end, it's a little dramatic, but what's going to be the change, the shift, the disruption in higher ed.
Yeah.
Cornish actually has reacted pretty well. Like everybody else, we went fully online because we had no choice. Order from the
Right.
government in Western States, so we had to go online in 4 days. Crazy, because a lot of faculty really didn't want to and didn't have the tools, didn't know how to. But we
Sure.
gave them 3 days of intensive, and then they just jumped into it. And I think it went okay. I think for an arts college, I think it went okay
Yeah.
for 5 weeks that remained in the semester. Now the big question is the fall 2020. It's a big question. This what is going to be the attitude of the student? I mean, how much the student is willing to come back on campus, not knowing what kind of experience he or she is going to have.
Yeah.
And faculty, how long are they going to survive? If we would have to keep going online exclusively, it's very hard for them to. I mean, I've talked to a few of them, and they've done it. They found ways to connect with the student. I think they really did the best they could, but
Yeah.
it's very hard for them too. Very hard. I mean, we talk about the students' experience, how hard it is, but faculty in an arts college being online, this is really not fun for them at all either.
Yeah. Both of us are theater
Fair enough.
students, and I don't know that I could
So
fathom that. Yeah.
it's so the plan for Cornish. I mean, we went online. We finished the semester. I'm not going to say students were thrilled. I think some were unhappy, but they they knew we had no choice.
Of course.
But the fall, I think we plan to do a mix of, what everybody calls a hybrid experience. So a mix of on-campus experience and a mix of online, which truly, at Cornish, we've been talking about this since I arrived at Cornish 3 years ago, that we needed to boost our online experience for multiple reasons, for flexibility, for student schedule, for transfer students, for a lot of different reasons. So I think it has helped us move quicker than usual to something we should have done earlier.
Right.
Now, teaching, what do you have in theater, the, what do you call the combat class? That's impossible to teach online, right? Those classes cannot be taught online. So how are you going to do it if you can only have 5 students? I mean, that's what we have to figure out at Cornish right now for the fall, is like how many students can we have in a room and still honoring the social distancing and everybody feeling safe. Same thing for dance. To some extent with music, it's a little easier, but for dance too, it's tricky. I mean, how do you do a duet without touching each other? How do you do a scene in theater when you cannot touch each other? So it's going to be a lot of creative ways to feel, to I don't know, to express love or to express touching or, intimacy.
Right.
But I think artists are capable of. I could totally see a love scene and keeping a certain distance. It's just reinventing some theater and dance. I mean, it's impossible to do a duet in a classical way without the partner touching the partner.
Sure.
So it's not possible, but I do think that at some point we're going to be able to go back to not being 6 feet apart at all time. In a safe way.
Agreed.
But it's certainly going to change things. But my point is, for higher ed, the current model, what's called now the old model of high tuition, is completely unsustainable. It's crazy to have students being so in debt at 25 or whatever you finish. And so
I agree with that one.
Preaching to the choir here.
I know. and of course, and it's a little bit of a struggle for me because I really don't like that idea of students paying a lot of money, and their money pays for my salary. So it's a little hard for me. It's not. It doesn't really follow my values, and that's why I see this crisis almost as an opportunity for higher ed to really change the model and to do something that would be more accessible. How does it look like? I mean, if we would do more online. It could save some money. I think there are ways to do an undergrad education not costing so much money. I'm new to higher ed, as you know. I've never experienced higher ed until I came to Cornish.
Yeah. Do you think that? So I have a question for that. Do you think that there's a chance at all for Cornish to be able to provide the kind of experience that you were able to get from UW in the arts? Like, someone goes for, instead of a 4-year undergrad education, majoring in dance or majoring in music with an emphasis on something, would it be possible for Cornish to provide certificate programs for people that are just that want to go in? I just want to get this one thing. I want to learn this one specific genre of filmmaking or the specific genre of acting or something like that to be able to get a certificate.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what Cornish should do. It's having much more entry points for everybody. So is it looking like certificate, transfer students finishing, or minoring? Also, Cornish really doesn't have minors. Could you double major, minor, transfer, certificate, non-matriculated student, like continuing education for anybody, for an actor who wants to learn how to do a website? You have 8 weeks how to build your website. Or to do a class in UX experience, because it's huge for any artist who have to create a website or some platform for people to experience their work. It's known now as the user experience, and it's a whole new science. And I think we should, as artists, be able to take a class on this. And so yes, this is what a new Cornish model would look like. Is continuing with the BFA, very intense, for people who really want to do their major in dance, but then they have the opportunity to get their major in dance, but also minoring in, marketing communication, visual communications, or arts management, or something a little different, accounting or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of really more entry point for students as well as partnership. I really, really think why Cornish is not partnering with Seattle Central and allowing Seattle Central students to maybe do an intensive on acting. And even if you are studying accounting at Seattle Central, and vice versa, if a student from Cornish wants to do something more about, again, visual communication or whatever else, why not offering that student two campuses experience? And it's not even campuses experience anymore because it can be done online. We've just seen that in the last 2 months. It's possible. So, and it's cheaper, and then you can continue to work. Our students at Cornish, as you know, have 2 or 3 jobs to make a living sometimes. And
Seriously.
And they still have to show up at 8 a.m. for the HNS, class. And what if that HNS class that is a requirement could be taken online, and they can do it on Sunday night if they want, or whenever in the middle of the night, so they can do their work, continue to do their work. So I think that flexibility, accessibility is key in the new model, and I think it will be a mix of all that. It will be, you have the Cornish experience, but you can take class at Seattle Central, you can take a class at wherever at what's it called, DigiPen, which is the the kind of the computer science kind of school, anything. And you get a mixed education of some sort with some certificate and maybe a BFA with a minor and a major and minor. So it gives you that flexibility, and also it gives you that edge because you are really have learned quite a lot of different things. You've expanded your portfolio. You just don't have just a BFA in acting or something like that. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. I mean, honestly, myself, like how you're describing this to me, I love the idea of as many options as you can provide. That's fantastic, right? And in any options, financially, artistically, career related, it's imperative for an education, if an institution can be able to provide a whole range of possibilities on how you can get from point A to point B. And while still getting because myself, I mean, yes, it was a lot of money for getting into Cornish, for going through the process, but I do really appreciate having my BFA, and I loved my education, right?
Exactly.
And I felt like that was right for me. But, someone else, I feel like I know a couple of people that I went through this BFA course with that had to drop out because they realized this wasn't the right thing for them, or they realized I want to do something slightly different, and to be able to adapt even through your schooling, I think is a really imperative thing. So I hope that is what goes on next for Cornish. That sounds really interesting and exciting to me about, the future of that college.
Yeah, well, what I realized working at Cornish for 3 years, higher ed is a very slow machine. That's really a little bit frustrating, and because I'm used to more nimble nonprofit that can really make pivoting and shifting quickly. And I don't know if a lot of students or alum knows that, but for Cornish, which is a very, very small private arts college, if you need to make one little change because of all the accreditation process and also the Department of Education, because if you want to get Fed money for students, federal ed, you're required by the Department of Education certain things. And so everything has to be approved by the board of Cornish College of the Art, a private board. Then by the accreditation bodies, in the case of Cornish, there's 2 or 3 different accrediting bodies, and the Department of Ed. So that can take 2 years.
Wow.
Seriously.
Oh my God.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
frustrating.
And that's for me the discovery of higher ed is even Cornish, which is probably faster than most because of its small size and small number of students. It's still very slow to make changes. It's just like by the time, let's say, faculty bring in, they want a new major for example, in design, we're launching 3 new major in design: animation, art gaming, can't remember, object design, something. Well, It's been 2 years in the process, and then you're approved in May, but then you cannot. The admission process happened from September to January, so if you're approved in September, it's too late to actually put it in your catalog for admission. So seriously, by the time the curriculum committee of Cornish says we want this major, it needs to be approved by the next board meeting of Cornish, which fairly quickly, could be in 2 months. And then it needs to go to the accrediting body. It could take 6 to 8 months. And then it needs to go to Department of Education. And then comes back to Cornish, and hopefully it matches an admission season, or if not, then you have to wait for the next admission season to update your catalog. So
and then with that,
that's tricky.
Do you find your professors and like your educators through that period as well, or is that also added on as far as the timeline to find the people to actually do the course?
True. Usually we do at the same time, meaning even if we haven't been fully approved for a major, we start recruiting faculty who would teach in that major.
Cool.
So, because it is paperwork, and most likely I think will be approved. It's just a question of process. And so it's just time process. And we do the hiring. Like, I think right now we're trying to find somebody for game art because we don't have any core faculty who can actually teach that. Although we know it's not going to be in our catalog this September, I think already, but we're going to have to hire just to get ready for it. Because the problem is the accrediting body will not approve a major if they don't see that we have a core faculty actually who can teach that major. So you see what I mean? We almost have to hire at the same time we make the proposal, because they want to see that you have the right faculty to teach that major. So
it's a lot of investment.
It's a lot of investment, and so the shift and the pivoting of Cornish is going to probably be in a couple waves. It's not going to happen overnight. I think the whole continuing education, like you just said, working with different colleges or partnering and having more transfer students. Just right now we actually get transfer students, but then they don't come because the transferring doesn't look good. I mean, we cannot accept their credit for some reason. I don't know. It's just a complicated thing, but we're not built, our curriculum is actually not built to accept a transfer student easily, which is very frustrating for a lot of us. So we're trying to change that too. And then there is the non-matriculated students. So again, like you said, certificate program, people who can come, not be matriculated student, so not BFA candidates, but just you and I who just want to do a certificate for, twice 8 weeks or something like that, evening classes, weekend classes, because you can continue working and you just do that to continue your education. So that, thank God, doesn't require as much accreditation, but it does require marketing to promote it, because it's, you can get great classes. If you don't tell the world, nobody's going to come. So, and marketing costs money. But we've been discussing all this for at least 18 months. I've been at Cornish, so it's definitely in our to-do list. The question is, how much can we do, and what pace?
It's so interesting seeing like just how the size of the body of the institution can just matter so much. Nick and I, we ran a nonprofit for a couple of years, like 4 years or so. And it was so interesting because, and, fun at times because, a wall comes up that we weren't expecting to have. And it's just kind of like, okay, it was like a speedboat compared to a barge that, a giant yacht that Cornish would have, right? We were able to just like, we just like go right around that and be able to like, all right, now we have to like adapt and do this crazy turn, which was fun, right? But then on the other hand, with like Cornish, you have this whole power of a whole force behind the decisions being made. But the problem with that is that it has to go from top down, being able to fully move its arms, right? Or whatever.
Exactly. And on top of that, faculty at Cornish, as many others, are unioned. So there is a union agreement, the CBA, which is a very important document for faculty and Cornish, because basically it's the Bible telling us what we can do with faculty and not do. And so
Right.
it ties, because well, it's called, it's that's what union are for, is to protect employees, which is I'm completely for union. But when you want to move to change a major or change curriculum, well, that has to go with the CBA. So you cannot change a core faculty. You need a new core faculty who teaches that and not that. Well, you're gonna have to find ways, meaning probably buy them out, meaning pay a faculty for a certain time, even though they cannot teach the new major anymore because that's not their thing. So there's all that. There is all that at Cornish that is pretty complicated to make any changes. I have discovered that, as opposed to a regular nonprofit that doesn't have all those hurdles, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
It's higher ed for you right there. Yeah. It's a slow moving boat, and to just shift the direction of the boat, it takes, you just have to slowly but sure, it will turn, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, are Cornish students included, and faculty sometimes don't realize that, we can think about it, and 18 months from now, it will start showing up, but for a while it won't show up because it's just very slow to implement. Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay. I have a bit of a left turn question.
Sure.
So you kind of described in your life you've lived in, if I can remember all of them, I think that would be a miracle, right? You lived in France and Africa and what was that?
Monte
place?
Carlo.
Monte Carlo. You've lived
Monte
in
Carlo. Yeah.
Seattle, all these different amazing cities. I've also kind of moved around a bunch myself. I moved to Seattle for college, and then right now I'm in New York, and now I'm planning maybe to move to Portland or maybe to a farm because of the pandemic and everything. What do you think is what have you gained from? Because I know personally, I think that every time I move, I get this whole new experience, and I get to experience all this new culture, and I can feel my heart kind of growing, right? Because I'm able to accept all these different locations and people of different stripes, because now I've lived in this place and this place and this place. What do you think has been your greatest takeaway from kind of living all over the world?
Well, I love it. I must say, it's interesting you're saying that. I've traveled a lot, but I've been actually based in Seattle for the last 27 years, which is huge for me. I did most of my travel before I was 25. But once I moved to Seattle, it became my home base. And obviously, when you have children, that's kind of settled you in. You just
little anvil.
cannot move as much as before. But I'm a firm believer, especially when you're young and you can do it, to actually travel as much as possible. That's why I love when Warren told me I want to move to France to learn about wine. I was like, go for it. I think traveling is, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think you learn, as you just said, Nick, every time you discover a new place, you learn new things that are going to help you shape who you are and how you react to things later in life. I do think that because my parents moved to Africa when I was 7, for whatever reason, I mean, it was just, my dad decided to move the whole family, my brother and I and our mom, to Africa for 3 years. That triggered for my brother and I to actually not fear to move to new places. He himself has lived in the U.S., has traveled all over, and same here, where, born in Versailles in the 60s, you don't necessarily are inspired to travel the world. It's a conservative city.
Sure.
French people don't necessarily travel as much as German people, or, so we could have stayed our life in Versailles. And I'm wondering if that would have happened if we had not lived through the experience of 3 years in Africa.
Yeah.
So, even early on, the travels you make with your family, with your parents, really probably shape how much you're willing to take off and experience the world. So
That's exactly what happened to me. I moved
Yeah.
to,
See.
I'm at literally from 7 to 10, so probably the same
Yeah.
age as you.
Same.
I was in South America in Peru.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is what started it for me. I just was like,
Yeah.
oh, like there's no fear in moving to a new
Exactly.
place now because I just
Exactly.
like, I know how to do it. I've known it's like in my blood and in my
Yeah.
body to
Exactly.
like be on the move. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. I never like linked it back to that like, oh, like, well, I've been doing this since I was like 7.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. I have been doing it since I was 7. So why stop
Exactly.
now?
Exactly. To my poor mom, who still, is desperate. I left her 27 years when I moved to the U.S.
Yeah.
That was a big shock for her because, obviously she would not see me as much, but
Sure.
she was very proud, but a little bit sad, and she's still sad. I'm still here, far away from her.
Was she born and raised in Versailles? Is your mom born and raised there?
No. Actually, my parents were not born and raised in Versailles. One is from Normandy and the other one from Brittany. Both from France for sure. But no, we moved to Versailles for my dad's job he was a banker originally. So that's why we moved to Versailles. But nobody is from Versailles originally, and actually none of us live in Versailles anymore. It sounds good, but Versailles, I'm not sure you want to really live there.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sure.
Fair enough. Well, and it's interesting too what you're saying about conservative cities and liberal cities and traveling around. All this stuff goes in because I'm from a more conservative area. I'm from Idaho,
Yes.
and there's definitely that urge within me as well. I mean, I didn't really travel around. I would go on road trips or whatever with my mom. Sometimes we would go to another state or something, but nothing like as big traveling from like to another continent. And that was, I never really had that in my mind until I felt the urge to do that all those years ago, 2017, I believe. Like when I had the urge to do that, when I came to talk to you about it and learn more about a new culture and a new way of living, for sure. It's so important and imperative, especially for artists, but I think for anybody. If I had my way, I would love to be able to provide that everybody is able to move to a different place and live there for at least a little while, because you learn not only like how other people live and how they interact, like you learn what you appreciate and what you don't want. You learn what works for you and what doesn't. And whereas if you live in your one place all your life, you ingrain all those values without questioning them. And those values may even be good values, but it's like those values don't unquestioned, they don't sink into your understanding of why exactly you have those values and why exactly you do that thing, right? Whereas if you go to another place, you go to these different worlds and different ways of how to live, you're like, oh, that actually is pretty cool too. I love what they do there. And that has definitely inspired me in my life. And I'm like, I want to be able to experience how so many people live, because one, it makes you a better artist and better creative, but it also makes you just a better person, a more empathetic person.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you get to appreciate what's actually very good and sometime in your own country, and things that you think are better in other countries. So it really gives you that perspective that, as you just said, makes you a more whole person and understanding and, more in tune with understanding differences in people and in cultures and in traditions and all this. So, I always highly encourage young people to travel as much as they can. Because at some point it gets a little more harder, when you start something, a family, or you start a work you really want to keep at it. But when you can, always take the opportunity to travel. I agree. And that's what I want to do when I get older. When but before getting really, really old but still able to travel, I would like to travel again.
Where would you want to go next?
I don't know. Probably some places warm, I must say. But I don't. I really don't know. I don't know. I just want. South America is definitely a place in the world that I would like to go again and learn more. But the little experiences I've had has been good. Especially, I like the people there. They're really interesting and kind and generous and I really, I would like to explore that more. I went only once last year when my daughter was there, but I would like to go back and maybe stay for a while, just see how it is.
I recommend it. I've been thinking about, like, instead of a farm or Portland, one of my things I keep saying is maybe we could just go to Costa Rica.
Exactly.
Hang out at the beach, catch some waves.
Yeah. Argentina too is a country
yes.
that I think, because it has a European flavor. So maybe Argentina. I don't know Costa Rica, but I've heard. I mean, exploring again. It's a huge part of the world, and I would love to explore it more. Yeah. So maybe
wonderful.
One of the biggest things that was a culture shock for me when I was in France. It was during the time I was in Paris during the time of like the Gilets jaunes protests, and
right.
I mean, like, well, that was just a strange thing for me because. It's, you know, we have a right to protest here in the States too, but I didn't know that it was a law for you to have your protest jacket on you at all times. Like, the French love to protest, and that is like such a core part of their identity.
Protesting, striking, making sure you're heard. I mean, you know, everybody has to be heard loud and clear in France. Yes,
totally. And that
sometimes I wish this country was more like France. I mean, I do believe right now we should be out on the street and protest a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially with these recent years. Yeah, absolutely. It was just so funny to me because I was like, oh, you have your own uniform for your protest.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Make sure you got the proper gear. I know that you got to do the protest thing here. Make sure you're safe about it. That's so nice. Just warmed my heart a little bit. Yeah.
It's a big business. Yeah.
Very civilized.
They know how to do their strike and their protest in France. Yeah, absolutely. They are the masters. They are the masters. Yes.
Right, for sure.
They don't mind if they block a whole country and you cannot even go to work. They really don't mind. It's like it goes above everything. It's really, if they strike, they strike. You're stuck at home. You cannot go anywhere. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is that freedom to express your protest. That's kind of the rule, you know? So it's a different culture here.
I was just driving, when I was over there, I would drive with my friend Richard. We would go and like sell cheese on the market together. And one of the mornings we were driving over and all these protesters like took up a whole roundabout. Like they took up and made an island out of this whole roundabout where it was like they built actual structures of this thing, and like they lived there. You know, they would take shifts and they would just like be, all right, now I'm on from 1 to like 12. Okay, you're here for this time. And I was amazed by it. You know, like they set up camp. That became their job for a while.
Sometimes they I can't remember which strike, but I remember in Brittany they dump like huge amount of potatoes in the middle of the highway just to block the highway with potatoes or whatever, vegetables, you know, they dump like huge load from their trucks on the highway, and then you cannot go anywhere. And they're like, no, we're striking. We're unhappy. We're protesting against this, and this is what you get.
This is what you get. Deal with it. I love that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can imagine someone with like a Jeep and just like, oh man, I forgot to do the starch resistance add-on. I can't get through the highway.
Right. No, it's a different culture. Yeah, it's a different culture.
Seriously. Wow. So, and actually one of the things that I was interested in talking to you about too, is, you know, during this pandemic, when the pandemic started, you were telling me that you had like a kind of a rough start at the beginning of this pandemic, right? Yeah. Would you be able to talk about that a little bit?
Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, I had my daughter who was in France in college as a freshman. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it actually happened a little bit more in France at that time, before Washington State. I mean, obviously Washington State was kind of early on because we were kind of the hot spot at the beginning. But in France, it just, the whole order to stay home, it happened before us. So it was stressful for me because I could see something bad happening. And I had my, you know, freshman in France and debating, should she come back here, stay there. What's going on? It was that time where we were not sure what was happening. And with the countries closed, we would be able to fly. And then suddenly Trump announced that, he was closing the borders. And in his press release or, press conference, he said, nobody can come back to America. And I was like, my God. And so very quickly, but it was not true because she's American. She's an American citizen. So Americans still could always come back to this country. So,
of course,
it was misleading, but there was a moment of like, wow, what are we going to do? It's not, anyway, it was stressful because she was over there. I was dealing with that and dealing with my work, not knowing what would happen at Cornish. We had to pivot quickly. And then my son was in high school. He's a senior. And then suddenly he had no more school. So that was it. And really no more school. I mean, Seattle School District didn't start online, teaching until, 4 weeks ago. So for the first 4 weeks. Yeah, because, it's a question of, good for them. They had to feed the kids first. And Seattle School District is huge in terms of providing meals for a lot of kids who just don't have food at home. Right. So anyway,
totally.
So that was I totally understood. Yeah. So the teaching was not their priority. Their priority was to continue feeding the kids who really needed to be fed.
As it should be.
But so that's what was stressful, dealing with all those three things together. And I quickly, I was on call with my daughter pretty much every day, and I booked her a flight. I think the day Macron, the French president, said, we're going to close the country. We're going to go lockdown on Wednesday at noon, and on Monday I bought her one of the last flight leaving from Paris to LA, she had to get out of our apartment. She did all that in the middle of the night because that was the only way. So she spent like 3 days not sleeping until she got on the plane to LA. So it was stressful, just because it was stressful for her, so stressful for me.
Of course.
But and then she arrived here on March 18 or 19, and a couple of days later she arrived. She was feeling sick. We're not sure if it was just the stress of everything, but she got sick, and I got sick, and my son got sick a little bit, and I got really, really sick, to the point I called my doctor because I really had all the signs of the bad virus, but they didn't want to test me because I didn't have enough fever. But nonetheless, I was really sick in my bed, having a hard time breathing, and terrible, terrible coughing, dry cough. So for a week, I was completely gone, and really not getting out. 3 of us were not getting out of the house, and we ordered food online, and that's all we did, and not getting out of the house for a good 8 days, and just surviving like this. And, Cornish had just kind of went to remote learning, but a lot of people were still going to work, actually. It was before the governor's order to stay home. So I was missing work. I couldn't really work, and I had a hard time saying I was sick. So I was just kind of trying to make it work, and it was very hard because I was exhausted. So, it was end of March were tough. But eventually things got better. I don't know if I had it, so I'm waiting. I will take that antibody test and see if I got it or not. But yeah. So it was a tough beginning. Yeah, it was scary.
Yeah, seriously. Like the beginning of this, like from getting your kids back over to one place, then you all getting sick. That must have been just so scary for you. And to the point that truly one night my daughter said, "Do you want me to take you to the hospital?" And I said, "No, I think I'll be okay." But it was at that point that my kids were looking at me like, "You're really not looking good, Mom, and what should we do?" So they're 17 and 19, so they're old enough to take care of themselves, so they didn't really need me, but they were worried for me for a good 48 hours, and then I got eventually better. I survived. But it was not fun. I can only imagine people who are getting really, really sick. It really makes you, I think, really bad very quickly. And at that time we didn't know much about the virus. I mean, we knew it was usually not,
being too bad for people healthy and under 60, and I'm under 60,
Sure.
so I was like, I should be good. I should survive this. But you never know. I mean, it was, again, the early stage of all of this, and so we really didn't know much about it. So it definitely was scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does move through a house quickly. I was a part of a nonprofit theater here in New York, and we would meet weekly. And one of the people who was working was on a national tour, and the national tour got shut down like midway through. And then he flew back, and then he got news that someone in their cast had gotten it.
Wow.
And then ended up getting and then he basically had it, and then he got and of course, in Seattle, everyone has roommates. In New York, everyone has roommates. So he got all of his roommates sick too.
Wow.
So he had it was like a house of 5 people.
Fast.
Who just boom, all of them got sick almost at the same time. He got sick first, and then like 5 days later, they were all sick too.
Yeah.
That's one of the craziest things about this whole
fast.
thing.
Yeah,
it's just like what I'm really interested in too about this is just seeing all these different parts of the country and the world, especially for sure, but like that about our country and like all the different states, and like seeing how it has affected all of us differently. And in a lot of ways, it's very similar. I was in Idaho at the time, and I was a part of a touring show, and then that had to get canceled because everybody was concerned, of course, rightly, and so we had to cancel it. And then we were a part of the lockdown and everything too. We quarantined ourselves for 2 weeks, and we're just kind of like stuck here, like, all right, what's the news? How much news can we learn? But it's been interesting, like for me, I mean, learning, Washington, how that has happened as far as state, and Seattle, especially especially being kind of the starting point of the virus in the States. That is something that I'm very interested in, because everywhere else it was like, okay, it's starting in Washington. Okay, what's going on now? And like, I imagine for you guys over there, it must have been very disturbing just to hear that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I remember taking the bus in the morning, and it was happening. We knew about the cases in Kirkland, and it was starting a little bit. It was starting a little bit in New York, and I was still taking the bus going to Cornish, and I was like, should I really wear gloves? Should I just walk, not take the bus? I mean, people were still taking the bus. You could see people with masks and the people without masks who seemed to really not care, and life as usual for a while. So. Either you were taking the direction of, okay, I'm scared to death and I'm just going to stay home. But it was not the case for Cornish. I mean, Cornish, we kept going for a while, especially the administration. We kept going to the office every day. So I had to show up. Until really I got sick, and then I really told my boss I'm staying home.
Right.
But truly, when I got sick, I was just like, I took the bus. I went to the office. I talked to people at Cornish. Then I went to a Cornish concert, and I heard 2 days later there was a former faculty who got it and got really sick. So I was like, oh man. And same as you, there was somebody at Cornish, some people at Cornish who apparently got sick, and you were trying to trace, was I in contact with this person or not? So yeah, there was definitely at that time this moment of how can I get it? What should I do? It's in a way the stay home thing just kind of made it very clear. Okay, now everybody stays home, and that's good. And I think Seattle was pretty good at staying home. I mean, you should have seen, for those of you who know Cornish and South Lake Union, suddenly it was a ghost town. I mean, I went a few times, and once Amazon and all those companies told their employees to stay home, it was like dead zone. It's pretty startling to see. From day 1 to day 2, suddenly there's no one. Everybody's gone. There's no car. There is no pedestrians. There is nothing. It's dead. It's like worse than a Sunday, really. So
That's so eerie. That's the most scary thing too. It's just like the desolation kind of feel of it. You're like, what kind of sci-fi movie am I in right now?
Exactly.
I was my so like actually right before we locked ourselves down, and this was right before the lockdowns all happened. I was in California. I was actually in San Bernardino. Yeah, San Bernardino, California, and I was over there because my great aunt died. She passed away, and so we were all there for a funeral. And it was interesting because it was right when the lockdown orders started.
Wow.
And we had to go there because she was very close to our family. We had to go, and so we were there. And during the funeral, it was crazy because we're in Southern California, and we are there, and we're driving around, and there's no one around, right?
No,
and like it's California. It's like you're expecting traffic for like a couple hours as you're driving around. You're expecting to like hear people honking and talking, and yelling, all these things, and then it is quiet. One of the crazy things too is like the sky's cleared up because no one's driving, like the smog is gone because no one's in their cars. And I remember being like, wow, this place is beautiful. It's like, like one of the things that like humans do is like they have a tendency to make things a little bit, a little grosser sometimes just by grouping together a lot of the time. But, I was able to see like nature for the first time really in California. I'm like, this is gorgeous around here. But it's also a weird feeling about it because the reason why it's so pretty right now, the reason why it's so nice to drive around is because we're in the middle of a total one of the biggest moments in human history. It was a strange feeling to have. And then like I was on one of the last flights back to Idaho from California because right before they locked the airports down. So that was crazy in itself.
No, that's absolutely. It's going to be interesting. I mean, again, now is looking at everybody reopening and how, the behavior of people. Are they going to go back to how they were doing things before, or is it going to really continue to? Is it going to deeply change people's mind about their behaviors traveling, their behaviors around shopping, their behavior about hugging, kissing, how. Even if it's legally possible, I mean, that you are allowed, are people are going to want to even go back into a theater and be sitting next to each other? Right. It's a behavior that is going to be interesting to see. Is it going to really deeply and for the long term affect people's behavior or not? Yeah. And it's too early to say, but I'm kind of curious. And the same thing about the environment. We demonstrated that we actually can consume less and we survive and not be in our car so much. So is it going to really, again, deeply affect our behavior to the point of changing our behavior around traveling, around going from point A to B? I don't know. I hope so. I really hope so. Yeah. But I don't know.
Same here. One of the things that I bringing it back to art and creation and, specifically like theater creation too is one of the things that I know as artists, as like theater artists, and when you're on stage, one of the coolest things too, like speaking of like how to show love, how to show connection is like, through that spatial relationship. And, that's one of the great questions is like, how do you show love 6 feet apart, right on a stage, or how do you communicate hatred of somebody? What's the form, right? Because that's one of the things that we always ask ourselves. And as a part of my foundation as an artist is like, give me the restrictions so I can have the freedom to live within those restrictions. And I'm excited for that too. Now that you're talking about this has got me excited about like, okay, well, how can theater live on? What if you had a production where one of the biggest things is like you had 7 actors on a stage, but they all had to remain 6 feet apart in order to create the show, right? And like, what can be experienced? What is the scene that you're setting? What is the images that you can create when everyone has to keep that spatial relationship? That is the challenge, right? And I think that art is kind of also, even though it's like we weren't expecting this to happen. I wish that this didn't happen because so many deaths have happened, so many things are going on. But as the opportunities to flourish and move forward and create new narratives and ideas, what oh gosh, like that is interesting to see those challenges and how artists can rise up to those challenges.
Yeah, but I think they will. I mean, you were describing how to put 6 people on stage who have to stay 6 feet apart and convey, love or hate or passion or laughing. I think there are many. Right. I can already see in my head many ways to turn that around. So it's going to push the envelope. It's going to be exactly.
I think a chorus line would still work.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I mean, when the Kate Meyer, the Sheila Daniels, this theater faculty, they've already, came up with so many great things that I've heard them do with students, and it's only the beginning. I think people like that will find new ways to challenge the consensus, challenge the norm, and push the envelopes to new possibilities. So I think that's the exciting part of this. I think it's what's going to come out of this.
Absolutely.
Even in business, I think some
grand experiment. We're all living just like test subjects. Okay, now we're living like this. I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think some things are going to disappear. Something are not going to survive, and it will be sad because we've known those things, or we've known those businesses, or they're going to go, and some others will do well, some other will be created. I'm not talking about just the arts, but in general, a lot of things are going to be, it's going to change. Definitely the world
that's a great point.
We know. Yeah. So it's a land of opportunity, I would say, for whoever wants to kind of be creative and forward thinking and out of the box and finding new ways.
Like a lot of artists that I talk to, and like through the creative process and their writing processes, or generating processes, one of the biggest terms that people use is like killing your babies, right? It is the idea of something that you hold so dear as an idea for this piece of art or something is sometimes it doesn't work for the project, right? It doesn't work for the thing, even though it's such a great idea. Oh my gosh, it could work. This could be so amazing, but it just doesn't work for this thing. And so you have to learn how to let that go in order for something new and possibly even greater to be able to arise, right? I know as Americans, I know as myself, there's so many things that I held dear. Especially I'm a very physical touch-based person. This is driving me crazy. This whole pandemic has done because I love hugging my friends. I love saying what up and all those things. But it is interesting to see that. And as far as a creative perspective of what as a society, as a government, as a body of people in a country to say all right, what are our babies that we need to kill in this, right? What needs to go? That we used to really hold dear, that we can now let flourish into something new about how we live our lives as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to learn how to let go and to give space for new things to show up. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have a super serious question for you.
Okay.
Cats or dogs? Why?
What?
Cats or dogs for pets?
Cats or dogs? I have both.
You have both. Great.
Yeah, I have 2 cats.
That makes the most sense in the world for me.
I have 2 cats, a dog, and a lizard.
Oh, you have a lizard?
Yeah, it's actually Australian. What's the name of skink? Australian skink with a blue tongue. It's a lizard. It's a big lizard, about 1 foot long. With a blue tongue. It's my son. It was my son's obsession 2 years ago, and so he got one through FedEx from Miami as a baby, and he was small. I mean, he was definitely small, and now I think he's actually 1.5 feet now. But it's a big lizard with a blue tongue.
A blue terrier.
Cool.
So that's its name is Bernie, and then we have Charlie the dog, and we have Lola and Othello for the cats, and they're all shelters animals except the lizard, but the dog and the two cats are rescue.
Rescues.
Yeah.
Bernie,
yeah,
Lola,
rescues.
Othello, and oh wow, how did
Charlie.
I forget that already?
Charlie the
yeah.
dog. Charlie the dog. Yeah. And
What a happy home.
You know, talking about the pandemic, they are the winners because they have us all day long. And personally, my pets love being with people. So they're like, this is a long extended vacation for them. Like they have everybody. They can be pet all day long. It's interesting. It's a new life for them for sure too.
Yeah, I've got my cat in my lap right now.
Yeah. I mean, I have the dog, I have the cat. Yeah, they're all around me all day long.
Yeah.
So I'm more
fantastic.
cat. I'm more, Nick, to respond to your question, I'm actually more a cat person originally. I always had
too.
a cat myself. The dog came because my son wanted a dog some 7 years ago, and so we got a dog. But I've always had cats in my life. Yeah, I'm more a cat person. Yeah.
Yep.
Very
I've been a
good.
cat person in my life too. That's great.
Yeah. I like their independence.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really great point of cats, especially like when you're in a city area too. It's like cats are so much nicer to have because you're like, all right, perfect. You can kind of take care of yourself.
Yeah,
You know, you can manage your own self.
Yeah.
You're good. I'll give you some
Cats
food.
are less
You're
like
good.
pets, they're a lot more like roommates that you just keep around, you know.
True. Exactly. If you feel like cuddling, they can cuddle, but if you don't feel like, they're not going to bother you, and if they don't want to get next to you, they won't.
Yep.
You know, it's like having it's more roommates. You're right. It's actually good.
They definitely don't consider themselves below you. That's for sure. You're not in charge of them.
No, no, absolutely. They are in charge.
Man, that's fantastic. And like that was like our biggest question that we have for you today. You know, it's just like we were really trying to work ourselves up to that because that was on our minds. So we have like a little bit of a lowball question for you now that we got that out of the way. Is like, so like, what do you foresee being the greatest positive change to come from this pandemic in the arts? Like for the arts specifically. I know that we talked a little bit about that, but if you could say like one thing as being the biggest possible change that can happen positive, like in a positive sense, what would you predict to be done?
I think it will help put the arts at the forefront of everything. We're gonna need creative more than ever before. So the artist as a position in society could really change. I think we have technology, we have science, we have all of this to, technically solve problem, but without the artist, the creative thinker, I don't think we're gonna get stuck. So I think I would say one big winner of this pandemic would be the artist, actually, as really the creative thinker. And I say the creative thinker because I think you can be a dancer, a musician, a designer, a fine art painter, sculptor. All those people who have been trained to create, to challenge the norm, to think out of the box, are going to be key in rebuilding this better world, I hope.
That's fantastic.
That's amazing. And honestly, that is such a refreshing perspective. And I think those are words that I think every artist should be hearing right now. Every creative should be hearing right now. That is a really cool thing to be able to hear. So, and thank you so much for being on this podcast with us. It has been such a great conversation. I had such a great time. I'm sure Nick has as well.
It was an extreme pleasure. It was great to meet you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure too.
Yeah. Good. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you on again. I would love to have you on again just because your perspective is always so refreshing to have. So, we look forward to next time. Thank you so much for coming on.
Happy to do whatever you want me to do. Next thing.
Awesome.
Oh, that's amazing.
You rock, Ann. guys, if there is projects that you're thinking of, if there's creative things that you want to do, if you're feeling downhearted, if you have felt that before this podcast, I hope that this podcast has encouraged you to go and create that thing that you've been wanting to create during this time. I hope that this gives you a new idea that brings you forward into the new chapter of our lives as human beings. That's what I hope for you guys, because honestly, that's how I'm feeling right now, because that is the power that this woman has over our lives. At least for me. I don't know, man. I'm like riding a
I can't
high.
wait to stop talking into this microphone and make some art.
I know.
To be honest.
Right, I know. We should just stop doing that right now, because honestly, we should just go be creating right now. So
yeah, we're going to go make some stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Yeah, see you guys later. Bye-bye-bye.
Bye-bye.